invite the audience to put some questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Donna. I feel the need, however, to start with a clarification. There is some degree of incongruence between the two speakers today. Bruno is part of the collective project that Donna surveyed and presented to us. I am a guest in this project, so it was only today that I got the details of it. Of course, some explanations reached me earlier. Now, we are supposed today to relate to each other two entities that crisscross with each other, but at the same time are significantly different from each other. One such entity is very broad, is the political right, the history and the memory of the political right, and we are all familiar with this. The other one is quite a spatial topic, that of corporatism, that deeply intermingles with the story of the political right, but nevertheless had important manifestations outside the area of the right. Unlike the right itself, corporatism is not an item to feature heavily in the public discourses in Europe and the world nowadays, and even less so in Romania. Dana already gave basic clarifications about corporatism and put on the screen what is actually the most influential work of the post-war period in the field, the celebrated article by Philip Schmittel, Still the Century of Corporatism, which was written with precise reference to the Romanian's Mihail Manuilescu, The Century of Corporatism of 1934. Now, the main point of Schmittel when producing that piece of comparative political science was precisely to rescue the notion of corporatism from its exclusive association with the notion of the political right. Over the previous decades after the end of the Second World War, it was generally considered within the social sciences that corporatism was a dead issue that had been compromised with the defeat of fascism in 1945 and had nothing to say to the democratic and democratizing Europe and the world after the war. Philip Schmittel argued for the continuing relevance of the corporatist phenomenon. Also arguing that within the horizon of the world after 1945, corporatism featured in two different embodiments. It was authoritarian corporatism that was employed, instrumented for purposes of accelerating modernization in late developing societies all across the world, and it was also the democratic brand of corporatism that is those elements of the corporatist phenomenon that had been domesticated, tamed, and put to work for the purpose of refashioning the welfare state arrangements within the developed, consolidated democracies of the West. Schmittel also traced back the two varieties of corporatism to primarily, of course, to the entire ancestry of the phenomenon, a very multi-layered one, but specifically, he traced back the democratic corporatism to John Maynard Keynes, and this was itself a very controversial issue because it was not a canonical characterization of Keynes in the literature, and the authoritarian corporatism to the Romanian Manuel Leșcu. So, having said this, we could expect the Romanian context of Manuel Leșcu itself to be invoked often and meaningfully in the debates about corporatism and all the implications of the phenomenon. This is not so, however, because Schmitter himself perceived Manuel Leșcu as constituting rather an exception, a stark exception among the ideologists and the politicians of the right in interwar Romania. He considered the corporatist idea to have played a marginal role in the politics of the right and in the general politics of interwar Romania. And he considered Manuel Leșcu to have shaped his view by drawing exclusively on foreign trends of thought, taking virtually nothing from within the Romanian milieu. So Romania, although the home of Manuel Leșcu, was considered a void place for the general comparative historical study of the corporatist phenomenon. This perception of what corporatism meant in Romania before communism that was cherished in the West under the influence of Schmitter and not only, resonated very deeply with the image that the Romanian scholarship forged and cultivated with respect to the phenomenon. Now, corporatism is a double-tiered issue. It has a social and economic layer, and it has a political layer. On the social and economic layer, corporatism is the right-wing interpretation of syndicalism, of the syndical principle. On the political layer, it is an interpretation of the demands of authoritarianism, either strong authoritarianism or mild authoritarianism, and primarily authoritarianism of the right. As far as the political dimension of the question is concerned, it was taken for granted in the Romanian historical studies up to very recently that corporatism was not a central doctrine, a central idea in interwar Romania. As far as the social dimension of the phenomenon was concerned, syndicalism was exclusively associated in Romanian scholarship with working class proletarian trade unionism developing within the emerging big industry and the hardness to the political discourse and the political activities of the socialist and communist forces. It didn't make sense to speak about vertically branded syndicalism as related in any fashion to the shaping of the social policies in Romania, to the origins of the welfare state arrangement in the Romanian context, to the politics of labor in Romania. Corporatism was a fascist intellectual fashion and nothing else. It was only over the past
Yeah.
Oh, no. Oh, okay. Now, what is here now on the screen are two figures which are meant as a testimony for the salience of the corporatist ideas and corporatist experimentation in Romania up to 1944. And of the strong connection between corporatist pleading and the entire process of the shaping of syndical life and with the origins of the welfare state arrangements. There are two projects for corporatist restructuring elaborated by the Ministry of Labor and Social Care during the war. Significantly so, they were elaborated under Antonescu, which means after the end of the political episode, that of the Carolist dictatorship, 1938-1940, that had avowedly adopted the corporatist self-image, yes, without obtaining any significant results in terms of restructuring the country, the Romanian politics and society on this basis, but nevertheless recommending itself as a corporatist regime. Something that did not apply to Antonescu's regime itself. By the time these projects were elaborated, the corporatist experimentations of Carolism had been closed, and the guild organizations that had started to be fashioned under Carol II had themselves been put to rest due to the demands of the war economy by virtue of a law of 1941. And it was in these circumstances, that is under a regime that did not openly exhibited the corporatist idea, that people within the Ministry of Labor deployed such great efforts to conceive of the Romania of the future as of a corporatist country. What is another significant issue in this context is the fact that Manoilescu himself was not a part of the technocratic team that elaborated this project. Now, nevertheless, in order to understand to clarify the map of the corporatist phenomenon in Romania, we have to start with Manoilescu, and this is a good place to emphasize the Portuguese connection of him. I put on the screen the Portuguese translation of 1938 of his 1934 Century of Corporatism, a translation that was to score a tremendous career in Brazil, starting with the 1940s. Manoilescu had around him a school of thought developing around his periodical Lumea Nouă, which was founded in April 1932. I retained two books by the closest disciples and associates of him, the economist Cristian Petrescu, who was the assistant of Manoilescu at polytechnic school, teaching political economy alongside the master, and producing many works on the topic, together with Ion Joldea Rădulescu, a legal scholar by profession, by formation, a journalist by profession, who wrote in 1935 System of Corporatist Politics, which was meant to systematize the ideas of Manoilescu. So Manoilescu did have disciples. Now, the intellectual evolution of Manoilescu crossed several successive political and ideological borders. The beginnings of his journey in the 1920s, the early 1920s, were in the immediate proximity of the post-First World War neoliberalism, that is the mildly authoritarian interpretation of the demands of modernization in the context of delayed development, retaining from the liberal creed the essentials, but also falsifying many significant compartments of the same creed. And from this starting point, from this baseline, Manoilescu first embraced the doctrine of economic protectionism that he developed to the full, in order for him then to make appeal to the corporatist design as to the political instrument for fulfilling the objectives of economic closure. His main work on economic protectionism was published in 1929. His main work of political doctrine in 1934, the one about corporatism. Once adopting the corporatist doctrine, Manoilescu also vacillated between two interpretations of the idea. The first one, which was less authoritarian, which vindicated the corporatist reorganization of society to take place from bottom up, from the grassroots, in an organic manner, not induced top down by state levers. This was the original position of 1934, and taking a departure at that juncture from the paradigmatic corporatist discourse of the time, that of fascist Italy, a very statist one, and then a more authoritarian statist interpretation of the idea, with his book on the single party of 1937. Now, all throughout this evolution, Manoilescu was negotiated a collaboration, a cohabitation with the main parties of the right in Romania, including the revolutionary, the party of revolutionary fascism represented by the Iron Guard. We have now on the screen the two most important documents of this debate, this discussion, this negotiation between Manoilescu and the radical right, his dialogue with Mircea Vulcănescu of 19 34, where he pleaded he defended the virtues of technocratic rationalism against the chiastic regenerative revolutionary vision of Vulcănescu, and then the article and the booklet of 1937, the anti-bourgeois meaning of the national revolution, which was published at the time of the December 1937 elections, and which constituted at the time the document of the expression of Manoilescu's allegiance to legionary politics. In order for him to be elected as a senator, as a member of the Senate on the list of the Iron Guard by virtue of the same elections. This cohabitation, however, was never completed. And one reason for this was the fact that the representatives of Romanian fascism themselves were not very enthusiastic about the corporatist idea themselves. We have now on the screen two of the most vocal expressions of the fascist reluctance towards the corporatist design, one of them coming from Ion Moța, the other one from the Cernăuți sociologist Traian Brăileanu, both of them arguing that corporatism was interested in the Romanian context, as fashioned by Manoilescu, especially, was interested only about the institutional reform of the state without taking seriously the objective of the moral reform that the Iron Guard considered to stay first, to constitute the first target of right-wing politics. Also, another objection that fascism in Romanian context raised against corporatism was the fact that the corporations, the corporatist bodies as envisioned by Manoilescu and his supporters did not provide for the principle of numerus clausus to be applied within. So the only possible result of such a reorganization of society, according to Moța and Brăileanu, would have been the creation of a cluster of professional organizations dominated ultimately by the foreigners, by the Jews, as it was the case and it had been the case in Romania before that. Nevertheless, Manoilescu did perform within the ranks of right-wing politics, first as a Carolist minister in the cabinet of Ion Gigurtu of July-September 1940, and we have here pictures of him accompanying Gigurtu at meetings with Galeazzo Ciano and with Johann Ribbentrop. We also have a photo showing him in the most dramatic day of his life, when as a foreign minister in the Gigurtu cabinet, he was obliged to put his signature on the Vienna award. But we also have a photo showing Manoilescu at the Romanian German Institute of Berlin on January the 14th, 1941, several days before the beginning of the Legionary Rebellion, of the the divorce between Antonescu and de Gaulle, participating in the commemoration of the legionary martyrs. Which are the rival strands of corporatist advocacy in Romania, competing with Manoilescu for the right interpretation of the creed? One of them was represented by Nikifor Krainic, who joined the fold of corporatist discourse earlier, actually, than Manoilescu in January 1932, in his newspaper Calendarul. And one aspect to be emphasized is the fact that no document certify the allegiance of Manoilescu to corporatist advocacy before the moment of April 1932. Krainic, together with his associates, depicted Manoilescu as a newcomer to the corporatist camp, suspecting him of plagiarizing the pioneers of the doctrine in Romania. Krainic's program for an ethnocratic state of 1937 was at roots a corporatist program with the ethnocratic dimension, that is the dimension of ethnic exclusion, the dimension of the numerus clausus as a basic principle for the structuring of the state, added, superimposed on the corporatist foundations of the design. Of greater significance, however, than Krainic himself was the movement of professional organizations embracing the corporatist creed and developing at the grassroots. A movement giving expression to the interests of the lower middle class in Romania, the movement of the traders, the merchants, the petty industrialists, the self-employed patrons, yes, but also a movement of the white-collar professions. The leader of this confederation of professional associations that adopted the corporatist view came from this last compartment of the intellectual professions, as they were called at the time. Ion Denescu was the president of the Society of Romanian Architects, but also the president of the General Confederation of Professional Associations created in 1930. And publishing periodical Drum Nou from 1930 to 1934. Grassroots corporatism, the corporatism of the professional associations of the lower middle classes, had a moderate wing and a radical wing. The moderate wing was the view of the moderate wing was best expressed by Enescu himself, by some other people as well, as for example the commercialist Ion Constanciu, for whom I couldn't find any photo, nevertheless. The radical wing of the movement was represented by a school teacher teaching at the Gheorghe Lazar High School in Bucharest, Grigore Fortu, who also developed from within the same movement of professional associations the first political party to expose a corporatist program, the Citizens Bloc for the Salvation of the of the country, launched in 1932, more than 1 year before Manoilescu's National Corporatist League that only came to the fore in November 1933. So Enescu and Forțu could legitimately claim the role of pioneers in relation to Manoilescu, and very significantly in the preamble to the program for an ethnocratic state of 1937, Crainic depicted Enescu as the father of corporatist advocacy in Romania. Of course, by the time Manoilescu had grown much more prominent both within Romania and abroad. The Confederation of Enescu started in 1930 from a Carolist platform, celebrated the Restoration, and joining the Carolist, the broad Carolist camp. However, the movement departed very rapidly from Carolism. Several wings of it, and especially the radical wing led by Grigore Forțu, who promoted the staunch anti-Carolist discourse in the context represented by the Iorga cabinet of 1931-1932. A cabinet that itself has to be retained as part of the story of the corporatist idea in Romania, insofar as Iorga made use of corporative discourse at the time of the electoral campaign in 1931, over the first weeks of his tenure, in order then to abandon completely any references to the project of reorganizing Romania as a corporatist state, and to be treated as a traitor accordingly by the representatives of the professional associations. And it was in this context that Forțu manifested himself as anti-Iorghist, but also anti-Carolist, due to the close association between Iorga and the king, and ultimately as an anti-monarchist, as far as such a stance could be voiced at all in Romania at the time. In the documents of the secret police, Forțu is classified as an anti-monarchist nevertheless, although his pronouncements in the press are difficult to be characterized as such in a clear-cut manner. There are other strands of corporatist thinking in Romania. Alongside the movement of the professional associations, the most important one to be highlighted is represented by a congery of legal scholars who took as a baseline the semi-corporatist provisions of the 1923 Constitution and of the 1926 electoral law, which provided for the special representation within the upper house of the parliament of the professional bodies, themselves represented by the chambers, the professional chambers, the chambers of commerce and industry, the chambers of agriculture, and the chambers of labor, with 26 places in the seats in the Senate being allocated ultimately to the representatives of the of the professions. Of course, this was only one compartment of spatial parliamentary representation as laid down by the 1923 Constitution, insofar as the universities also enjoyed the regime of the same sort, as well as the bodies of provincial administration also had a segment of the Senate reserved for them. Now, it was considered that no matter how modest they might appear to us, the provisions of the sort were likely to redress the drawbacks of standard parliamentary representation. They were able, as such, as it was thought at the time, to harmonize the demands of parties-based parliamentarism with those of profession-based parliamentarism. They were able, that is, to place the legislative body on a more organic basis, to strengthen the connection between parliamentary politics and the underlying social body. Around these provisions, constitutional provisions of the early 1920s, then there grew a body of literature in legal theory. We have on the screen the two most influential representatives of this stream of thought. One of them started from such moderate basis in order to evolve towards a right-wing discourse, joining the movement of Rizescu and Porțu in the early 1930s, then manifesting himself very vocally under the Carolist dictatorship with the same targets. But nevertheless, the baseline of Gruia's engagement with the starting point of Gruia's engagement with corporatism is more significant than the later stances adopted by him in this respect. From 1927 to 1930, Gruia published in a leading journal of legal theory, the Revista de Drept Public, a series of 4 articles about the problem of professional representation, yes, whose target, whose political conclusions were not of the radical right sort. Whose target was to place the constitutional provisions of 1923 on a sounder theoretical basis, to place them in a broad comparative framework, and to argue for the feasibility and for the rationality of professional-based parliament. Of course, Gruia envisioned a broadening of the professional compartment of the parliament, but nevertheless, although he ended his survey with an analysis of the Italian fascist corporatist regime, he did not plead for fascism at the time. Still more moderate in this respect was Marco Baraș, a legal scholar, specialist in labor legislation, and a disciple, a staunch Romanian disciple of one European school of corporatist thinking, that of French pluralism, whose main representative was the the jurist Léon Duguay, but whose vision was traced back to the sociology of Émile Durkheim as well as to the political theory of Léon Bourgeois. And it was from this theoretical framework that Barash started his dialogue with the syndicalist tradition and with the corporatist tradition. Also striving to strike a middle ground between the left wing and the liberal interpretations of the syndical principle, that is between the vision of horizontally branded syndical activities and syndical militantism on the one hand, and the vision of corporatism on the other hand. The main reference of him as far as Romania was concerned was once again the constitutional provisions that I spoke about. So the survey that I try to give today shows Romanian corporatism as split. On the one hand, between a top-down, ideologically driven development, whose most prominent figure was Manoilescu, yes? And the bottom-up development starting from the grassroots, and having as the main vehicle the organizations of the lower middle class. That's one important classification division that we have to observe. Second, we can identify on the map of the corporatist phenomenon in Romania radical strand and the moderate strand. Yes. With such people as Nikifor Crainic, Grigore Forțu, or the later Manoilescu, the Manoilescu of 1937, staying at the pole of radicalism in the field, with such other people as Ion Enescu and Marco Baraș staying at the pole of occupying the pole of technocratic moderation in the same field. And these associations are, I think, relevant for the sake of relating the pre-1944 Romanian experience, Romanian engagement with the demands of corporatism, with the relating these developments to the post-1945 worldwide theorizing on corporatism and experimentation, institutional experimentation on a corporatist basis. Because once again, as I already said in the beginning, the school of thinking that originated with Schmitter in the 1970s like to emphasize the distinction between statist-based corporatism and societal-based corporatism, between liberal corporatism or corporatism that can be accommodated by liberal democracies on the other hand, and having John Maynard Keynes as the main hero, and authoritarian corporatism on the other hand. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this presentation, because I think it gives a very complex understanding of what corporatism was in the interwar, and also what corporatism was not, in the sense that we cannot bundle it together with radical right. And I really appreciate that perspective because I think Bruno will talk a bit from a different angle, but also because it takes us to some important elements that I just want to clarify for the room and to be my questions. But before that, maybe I don't want to intervene. I will be the first to ask questions, but if somebody else has, please do so. So what interests me in the corporate design is really what it responds to. So why is it not syndicalism? And in a more simple fashion, what does it propose? What does it say? Why are we better than the left? Mm-hmm. Why are we better than liberal parliamentarianism? And what is their vision of society? Because I think that also takes us a bit to why it can be easily conflated with the radical right. So that would be my first. You went through it, but
it's a social demand.
Exactly. You went through it, but I think for the room it would be really important if you gave us a bit more detail than that.
No, I think the two most important targets of the corporatist vision are, on the one hand, the elimination of social divisiveness, which is thought to be nurtured by both horizontally branded syndicalism and by parties-based parliamentarianism. So this is that is pleading for solidarity as against divisiveness. And second, the second target of corporatism is that of elaborating an instrument for the mobilizations of national energies for the sake of a modernizing breakthrough, for the sake of sustained, accelerated modernization, as well as for the sake of expansionist endeavors. This is what corporatism was meant to achieve in its paradigmatic context, that of fascist Italy. But when saying this, we have also to underscore a very important difference between the Italian context and the Romanian context. I would venture to say at this juncture that Portugal maybe could be said to stay in between the interwar Portugal. Italian corporatism was 100% an intellectual construct that was adopted by the fascist authoritarian state and foisted upon society, promoted top-down, pressed upon the social body, starting with 1926, the law for the organization of the syndicates. Which means that by the time the fascist party adopted the corporatist vision, itself taking shape by virtue of a synthesis between two intellectual traditions, one being the forward-looking developmentalist nationalism of Enrico Corradini, and the other one being the tradition of revolutionary syndicalism. Yes. By the time the fascist party adopted this vision, there were no in Italy. Italian society had left behind any trace of continuity with the traditional guild organization coming from pre-modern times. Yes? The immediate background of the Italian fascist corporatist campaign was the full-blown syndicalist life of the late 19th century, the early 20th century, having actually its apogee in 1921 after the war. Yes. So one cannot speak by reference to the Italian context of a cohabitation between professional associationism of the modern time, that is of the syndicalist type, and professional associationalism of the traditional guild variety surviving into the modern times. Any continuity of the later sort was broken by the time. This was by far not the case of Romania. In Romania, in fact, one can speak about a virtual corporatist continuum stretching from the time of the traditional guilds up to 1944. Yes. And this is because the traditional guilds, which were first declared dismantled, dead by a decree of 1873, never disappeared from the scene. They continue to survive in order for them to be rejuvenated, to be refurbished by the laws for the organization of professions and of the social insurance, the laws associated with the names of the ministers Misir and Rizescu of 1902 and 1912. Yes. And in order for the same kind of professional associations of the traditional variety to survive once again after the introduction of law for the organization of syndical life, tracing its vision to the philosophy of the International Labour Organization, of which Romania was a part, and which law was introduced in 1921. Once again, the guilds coming from the 19th century were declared dead, but they survived alongside the syndicates of the new variety. In order for the same bodies to be once again declared dead in 1933, yes, this time for good, this time being dismantled, but in a context which was already marked by the prominence of the new kind of corporatist thinking and advocacy of the modern variety, that is the advocacy that was put forward by reference to foreign fashions by people like Kreinik and Rizescu, and which made reference to the European experimentations of the extreme and the radical right. Yes, and then there was the fourth stage in the corporatist continuum, the unfolding of the corporatist continuum in Romania under the banner of modern corporatism up to 1944. So very difficult, very different landscape from that of Italy. Against this background, your question, I think, has to be a bit readjusted. So the Italian corporatists did have the objectives that I rehearsed when adopting the corporatist design. The Romanian corporatists partly stood in continuity with traditional arrangements that had never been uprooted. Yes, people like the associations grouped around Rizescu in 1930 had certainly had a very strong memory of what traditional guild organization had always been in Romania.
Thank you. So for the sake of time, I would suggest to take a short break.
Now or after the break? We have questions after the break.
I think no, we can ask questions now, but for the sake of time, so we also have time for Bruno's presentation. Maybe let's take 1-2 clarification questions now for Professor Rizescu's presentation. Then we go into a break, and then we continue with Bruno. Is this okay? Because I think we don't need a break. Okay.
So, okay. Let me pick. I have 4 questions that I have to pick 2.
One.
I would prefer all the 4.
Yeah, we'll do it in Friday. Okay, the one question is this, perhaps for the benefit, and being altruistic, for the benefit of everybody here, you were talking about the numerous clauses. Could you explain to us a bit what that meant? Because I'm sure that everybody will benefit from it. See, of general science.
That was my next question.
Yeah. And the second one has to do with. Second one is, I'm sure that what we heard today is better than Googling corporatism. Yeah.
Is the greatest compliment I got in.
No, I mean that.
Listen.
And actually, screw time issues. I want to start by saying that this was incredibly clear and vivid presentation of something that I had no clue about before. And everything was very clear. I think that's what made it easy for me to formulate questions, because otherwise, when you're presented with something totally unclear, it's very hard to formulate questions. So, okay. The question is this. You were talking about radical versus moderate corporatism, and I think that perhaps we need to clarify what that means. Is it radical in the sense of being authoritarian versus non-authoritarian? Is it the same thing or not? So perhaps you could talk about that, and then in private I'll ask you other things, like, for instance, how do we connect your divisions? How do they connect to the left and right? Politics, and out of curiosity, would you say that Rizescu was an opportunist politically?
He was depicted as such by all the time, but this was by far not an exception in the Romanian milieu of the time. Nevertheless, the pioneers of corporatism in Romania did present him as such. I retained very, very glamorous quotations in my works where they speak about all this fashion. No, numerus clausus was the principle that the Romanian national movement adopted very emphatically already at the moment 1922-1923. That is the principle according to which the ethnic groups had to be represented within the various institutions, the public institutions, the educational institutions, according to their proportion within the general population. So at the roots, of course, was the perception of the Jews primarily as overrepresented within various compartments of social life, even hugely overrepresented in some professions, yes, as for example law or medicine. Yes. This is about numerus clausus. Yes. Now it is interesting that Manoilescu never subscribed to the numerus clausus view to be applied to his project of corporative restructuring, because his main argument was that this didn't have anything to do with economic rationality. So economic rationality had to stay first in this respect. You couldn't destroy a certain segment of the economy of the social life only in order to apply the numerus clausus view. Now, radical and moderate. this means two sets of divisions, two distinctions. On the one hand, was indeed top-down state-driven versus bottom-up organically grown, yes. On the other hand, was wholesale organization of the state and society according to the corporatist demands, as against partial organization of the state and of society according to the same demands. So having the entire parliament organized on a professionalist basis, that is dismantling altogether parties-based parliamentarianism and replacing it with profession-based parliamentarianism, just treating profession-based parliamentarianism as a component, as a countervailing device to that of the parties-based affair. Yes, these are the two. Yes, so and we can identify significant nuances in the different texts. Yes, that they were not just the poles of authoritarianism and non-authoritarianism. There were also positions in between, and some ideologies, politicians, of course, evolved over time. Yes. Now, maybe some more factual clarifications could be useful in this respect. I presented Ion Enescu, the architect, the leader of the white-collar professional associationism, as essentially a moderate. Yes. In the beginning, he definitely was so. In 1935, he joined the National Christian Party from the very inception of that party. Yes. Within the ranks of the National Christian Party, he adopted the numerus clausus view sometime in 1936, 1937, demanding, for example, that the profession of the architect should be Romanianized. Yes. Yes, but this is another one aspect that I didn't touch upon beforehand today. There was one peculiar aspect of the discourse promoted originally by Enescu in 1930, namely that for him, professions-based parliament was envisioned to be a cure against the deeply entrenched ills of Romanian society, which were diagnosed as such by everybody from all corners, namely the ills of over-bureaucratization, of economic interventionism, suffocating free enterprise, of corruption, rampant corruption. All of these were associated with the politics of the parties. Yes, while the politics of the professions was expected by him to bring about a healthier politics in Romania. And there is in Enescu an interesting association between the accents of free trade liberalism and the corporatist demand. For him, corporatism was expected to be a vehicle for the promotion of free trade liberalism as against protectionism, interventionism, statism, bureaucratism, and so on, at least by reference to the Romanian situation, because I could never find him theorizing in this fashion in general terms. Yes, it never said that in France, for example, corporatist organization could be expected to have the same results. But at least in the Romanian milieu, he thought in this way. And in this respect, Enescu was a moderate corporatist. Yes. Okay. Okay.
Yes, I know.
One thing, nothing more. 1 minute. So, thank you for mentioning everything, but you want the Rizescu is quite. I knew this guy from the archives, but I didn't know precisely who he was, and now it's very clear. But in 1930, he was named director of the Casa Construcțiilor, for the company for construction. It was the main institution of the Minister of Work, was supposed to conduct all this social housing reform in Romania.